Good afternoon, once again tuning in to join us live here on the African Reform Movement channel, where we discuss everything African reform with an emphasis on Ghana. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. My name is Uche, and the gentleman who's going to be speaking to us is called Dr. Nii and Darko. Just what I do at the beginning always, if you're new here, just to let you know that Dr. Nii has a number of social media platforms which he operates on. So you can connect with him here. I always like to draw people to the sankofaafrica.com website, where he's got a number of his own articles posted up there. Time to read, digest, and understand Dr. Nii's thought process, why he thinks the way he thinks, and how to arrive at the conclusion that he's arrived at. Okay. He also has a number of books that he's written, and they are for sale at his Book Nook store. That's the details below. Weep Not Africa, Fifth Republic, Tete Kwashi, The Star to Follow, to name a few. Please do familiarize yourself with the books, because again, it'll really help you understand why his political view is the way it is. Okay, so take note of that, and please do avail yourself of his books. All information with regards to Dr. Nii's social media handles and his Book Nook store are in the description box. So if you haven't had an opportunity to write it down at the moment, don't worry, it's all there. Okay, so Dr. Nii, a new foundation I lay, P.E.S.T.S. When I first saw it, I thought, huh? But when I saw what you've written after, I was like, okay, I get it. So yes, this is going to be quite an interesting one. Dr. Nii's going to really share his heart again. It'll help you to understand why his mind has been shaped the way it is, and it makes perfect sense. So Dr. Nii's going to take you through this, and then don't forget to please post your questions in the chat function. Unfortunately, some people are too, I don't say afraid, but too shy to post questions. They think their English isn't good or whatever. But we'll be able to figure out what you're talking about. Dr. Nii wants to answer your questions, your burning questions. He wants to answer them. So don't feel shy. Please do, as he's going through his discourse, any questions that come to your mind, pop them in the chat box, and we'll discuss them at the end. Okay? So Dr. Nii, over to you.
Thank you very much, Uche, and all those who have made time to be with us this morning in Ghana. We are talking about something very important. We all know where Ghana is now. We know that Ghana is in the economic doldrums, and we don't know how we're going to get out of it. Getting out, we may, but we've gone to the IMF 17 times, so the solution is not just getting out this time, because if we do not redo everything, if we don't do everything properly, again, we may end up in this situation in the next few years to come. So we are not talking about getting out of this mess. We are talking about building a new Ghana. And to build a house, you need foundations. As far as I'm concerned, the foundations of the Ghana we live in today, or the Ghana of today, were badly laid to start with. To get a new good house, you need good new foundation. And that's what I'm talking about today. A new foundation I lay. P.E.S.T. Ghana must be born again. Born again means complete regeneration. A distinct separation or departure from the old self to the new self. And today we are looking at 5 areas of the life of Ghana that needs to be born again. First slide, please. A new foundation I lay. P.E.S.T. Ghana must be born again. P stands for political, S economic, S social, T technological, and S spiritual. Oh, spiritual too. All right. So let's start. Second slide, please. Political. I was talking about this for some time now, and his sentence is basically centered on Afro-democracy and economic federalism. I don't know whether I should go into it again, but basically, the politics of Ghana is defined by the Constitution. What the Constitution defines the state to be is what the state is. What the Constitution defines the government to be is what the government is. There is no other description outside the Constitution. Our Constitution says that the state is a unitary state. Okay, and I reject that. You see, it's only a fool who does the same thing the same way and expects different results. We have had this state, with the exception of, I think, 2 years under one party rule. We've had a unitary state since independence, and we are where we are. It was a wrong foundation. It was never meant to be like that, and it should be like that, and we have to move away from that. And I propose a different system. I propose a different state. And the state I propose is based on economic federalism, where 8 to 10% of the population will form a state or a region. I prefer a state anyway. Now, as we are talking right now, Ghana has got 16 regions. Some of them only 2% of the population, and some of them 20% of the population. So obviously, we are talking of mismatched parts. Okay, when you live in the economic space where one entity is 20%, another entity is 2%, the 2% one, all things being equal, cannot compete with the 20%. And that's what is happening in Ghana. So all the weak regions have eventually collapsed and they're all moving towards Accra. It's not sustainable. We have done that for 65 years. We know it's not working. Okay, we know it's not working. Now, what the economic federalism does is to create 2 spheres of influence at the national level and at the state level. 8 to 10% of the population will form a state. So we're going to have about 11 states, maximum 11 states, minimum 10 states. Okay. Now, each state will have 5 districts. Okay. So what you're saying is that if the state is 10% of the population, the district is then about 2% of the population. And then each district will have we have 5 constituencies. So we have 3 levels in the state. The political level, which is the state parliament, the service level, which is the district, and then the electoral level, which is the constituency. I'm talking about this at the right time, so I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But you can find it in my book, Demography. You can also find it in my book, The Fifth Republic. Now, we have about 260 districts in Ghana. Okay. We've created more this. In 1992, we had only 110. But now we have 260. And things have gotten worse because the structure is wrong. Okay. You think that by creating more districts in outlying areas, the people will stay there and work. But if you create more districts, the more districts you create, the more they migrate to Accra because the whole structure is wrong. How can Ghana have 260 districts? What are they doing there? All right. Under democracy and economic federalism, we're going to have only 55 districts. Okay. Now, these 55 districts should be able to sustain themselves. We're not going to go too much in that, but we are talking of Ghana must be born again. Political rebirth. We need a new state. We need a new state. And that means we need a constitution that will define the state as such. We need a new constitution. Full stop. The government. As we are now, the government is the executive. They say it's the executive, the parliament, and the judiciary. We know it's a joke, okay? We know it's a scam. Because with the exception of this particular parliament, the party in power has always controlled the parliament and has been an absolute rubber stamp. Okay, it means nothing. It's to the point that it's even the president who appoints the Speaker of Parliament. This is the only democracy in the world where the Speaker of Parliament may not be an elected member of Parliament. Okay, so you may have an unelected person heading the elected place, like Parliament, and when the president and the vice are not in place, are not around, an unelected person becomes the president in an elected democracy or elective democracy. Isn't that a joke? Isn't that a joke? In Australia, the Speaker of Parliament never becomes the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister is not there, there's a Deputy Prime Minister. If he's not there, a member of the executive acts as Prime Minister, because you cannot make a member of the legislature, if really we're talking about separation of powers, to become the head of the executive. It's an absolute joke. But we have it in Ghana. And the historical reason is there, but I'm not going to go into that. And then we have the judiciary, okay? Now, the judiciary has no upper limit. So the president tomorrow can decide to appoint 4 more justices to the Supreme Court, and he appoints the members to the Supreme Court. He determines the number, and he appoints the Chief Justice. It's a joke to talk of separation of powers under these circumstances. So the government, the executive itself, the president can appoint as many ministers as he wants. I think at the moment we are around 20 or something like that. I've even stopped counting. So we need a new system of government. We need a new system of government. We have a president and a vice president, and the vice president doesn't have any portfolio. He only does what the president tells him to do, and we pay him a lot of money. Okay, so it's no value for money. We got to change the system. So we're going to have a president as head of state, an elected president as head of state, and appointed prime minister as head of government. And the prime minister will have up to 25 ministers working under him or her. Now, full stop. No more, 25. 25. Now, the 25 will be divided into 5 super ministries of similar portfolios. So you have the social ministry, where you have Ministry of Health, Education, Special Education, and those big spenders. They form the social group, and then they'll have one super minister, one senior minister. So out of the 5, one of them will be a senior minister. And this senior minister, and this group, when one of them is not around, one of the 5 will act as the minister. No deputies. No deputies. Okay? 25 ministers, no deputies. Now, we're going to have 2 levels of 2 levels within the executive system. We have the higher executive council that will be made up with the president, the prime minister, and the 5 senior ministers from the super ministries. And then we have the committee of ministers, which is the general cabinet, all right? And that will be headed by the prime minister and the 25 ministers, okay? If the president is not around, the prime minister will act. If the prime minister is not around, one of the senior ministers will act. It's as simple as that. Executive power cannot be transferred to the legislature. Okay, it doesn't happen in any civilized society. Now, we're talking about the new government. Then, of course, we have a parliament, which is going to be based on proportional representation of 100 members only. So, if we decide to continue with the party system as we have now, if a party gets 52%, then that party will have 52 members in its parliament. Okay, how are we going to select parliamentarians? We're not going to use the present constituency-based election where the first past the post is the rule. It's fraudulent. Okay, we're going to have what I call national tally, regional representation. So we've done the elections. Greater Accra gets 20% of the votes. So 20% of MPs will come from Greater Accra. Central Region gets 10% of the votes. 10% of MPs will come from Central Region. And then we'll go like that. But I've discussed all these in my books and I've talked about them, so I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But what we are saying basically is that the constitution as we have it now is dysfunctional. The president can appoint as many ministers as he wants. The president can use the Electoral Commission to create as many parliamentary seats as he wants, and the president himself can create as many seats in the judiciary as he wants. Okay, it's an absolute joke. We're going to cap everything. 25 members, 25 ministers, 100 members of parliament, and 7 to 9 Supreme Court judges. Minimum of 7, maximum of 9. Case closed. All right, next slide. Economic. Now, we are in turmoil. We are in economic turmoil as we speak now, because we just don't know what we are doing. Okay. And because we don't know what we are doing, when an African country gets oil, they say it becomes a curse. Because oil on itself cannot develop a country the way we do our things. The foundation of wealth, is not natural resources. Otherwise, Switzerland will be the poorest country in the world. but it's the richest country in the world. The foundation of wealth is not natural resources. Otherwise, Singapore will be the poorest country in the world, but it's the 8th richest country in the world. The foundation of wealth is rule of law. Okay, so you know, let's do so many things. You know, I was speaking about this before. Wealth of a country can be divided into two: intangible wealth and tangible wealth. Intangible wealth is 80% of the wealth of a nation, and tangible wealth is only 20%. So what makes up intangible wealth? Rule of law, that is 45.6% of a wealth of a nation is in rule of law. Dependable judiciary, effective government, property rights, personal security, and what? Yes, rule of law, independent and reliable judiciary, effective government, property rights, and what was the other one? Personal security, and I think good land administration. And education is 28.8% of the wealth of a nation. And this will explain to you why Singapore is up there, why Norway is up there, why Switzerland is up there, why all those little countries in Europe are up there. Rule of law and education. And look what there are others. But rule of law and education, the two of them, they are giving you almost 75% of the wealth of a nation. Only those two. We don't need anything. Only those two. They account for almost 75% of the wealth of a nation. Then the tangible ones, they form only 20%. 70%, it goes to manufacturing, or what you're talking about, the infrastructure that people make so much noise about. They come to only 70%. When you go to Switzerland, you realize that the wealth of that nation, only 70% is manufacturing. What do they manufacture apart from watches and chocolates? I think by now, China is even making more watches than Switzerland, but they are still the wealthiest nation in the world. What does Singapore manufacture? You got to ask yourself. No cars, no aeroplanes, no television, no big things, but they are 8th wealthiest nation in the world, and the number 1 wealthiest nation in the Commonwealth. And then natural wealth. Natural wealth is only 3%. That's why we talk about cocoa and we are still poor. That's why we got oil and we are still poor, because we have done nothing or very little about the 80%. You can't build a nation's wealth from the 3%. Natural wealth. Or all those things we talk about. So now, when you're talking about the must be born again, the economy must be born again, we are not even come to fiscal policies and monetary policies. We talk about the foundation. We need to lay a new foundation, and it must be based on the intangible, 80%, rule of law, education, and of course, the manufacturing and the natural wealth, they become surplus. Jara. Okay. Now, we can go into fiscal policy while we are where we are, spending more than our salary, borrowing, and all those things. But all those things have happened because there's no rule of law. A minister decides to borrow, and then one of the companies that will administer the loan is his own company. And then after 65 years after independence, we are still debating what is conflict of interest. We know what you do. No rule of law. A president comes, undermines the Supreme Court by appointing so many MPs to the Supreme Court, what do you call it, justice to the Supreme Court, so that it will win every single case. Another one came, and after some people threatened the Chief Justice and other females in the Supreme Court, and they were jailed, he pardoned them to undermine the authority of the Supreme Court. The president pardoned somebody who has been sentenced by the Supreme Court, and he thinks it's a joke. Who will come and invest in a country where the president has so much power that he can do whatever he likes? That when he is even robbed by somebody, the president can actually pardon that person. I mean, we don't understand these things, how they affect the economy. That's why they are called intangible. As you all know, it says that by faith, we believe that this world, the worlds we live in, were created by the word of God. And the things which are seen were made from things which did not appear. Even the visible things that we see came from invisible things. The tangible things we see came from the intangible. And the same thing applies here. Okay? All the things we see, the rule of law that we cannot see with our eyes, that we hold like a railway or airport or whatever, those are the things which give weight to the things we see. When we destroy them, we destroy the things we see. And that's where we are today. Next slide. Social. First and foremost, every economic activity is driven by man. Fortunately or unfortunately, the man in Ghana comes in many forms. We are a multi-ethnic society. Okay, so inclusivity is key for national development. We have to, as it is now, there is nothing in the Constitution that makes sense in terms of our nature as a multi-ethnic society. That makes inclusivity a key aspect of governance. There's nothing. Now, people don't understand this, but one of our fundamental problems in Ghana is the lack of leadership that understands that we are multi-ethnic and we are poor and we need to pool resources, we need to harness energies to create a viable country. We've lacked that. The moment somebody becomes president, his ethnic group fills every place. And they tell you, oh, what if, that they are qualified? Who told you they are qualified? Who is not qualified? Didn't you all go to school in Ghana? Didn't you all go to school in Ghana? Which school did Kenofurata go? Which school did Bido True or whatever go? Which school did Gabriel Chidako or whatever? Which school did he go? Who were his classmates? They should bring the report cards. And all those people working around there. And the same thing applies to Mama and this government. The moment somebody becomes president, then only his ethnic group or his region has the competent people. And here we are with the competence. Absolute disaster. Now, key is national cohesion. But there will be no national cohesion unless people are empowered politically and economically. Once that is done and the energies are harnessed, then we know that national development and progress becomes a matter of course. In the governmental system, I have said that if after elections, each state is 8 to 10% of the population. Now, whatever how do I put it? If after elections, a region pulls 10% of the votes, okay, that region will have 2 members of parliament, 2 members in the cabinet. The cabinet is only 25. If a state pulls 20%, that state will have 4 members in the cabinet. If a state pulls 5%, that state will have one member in the cabinet. We have to do it so that everybody feels that he or she or is part of the country, is part of the government. Obviously, if everybody gets 10%, that means everybody will get two what do you call it? Ministers in the government. We have to make a conscious effort, because I went to school. When I was in medical school, every ethnic group was represented. Every single region was represented. So I cannot sit here and say that it's only my family members who are competent. When I went to university, my first roommate, Kombete, he came from Upper West. I think he even got first class in economics. So I know that people all over the place who are competent. My great-grandfather had 35 children. So from my family alone, that line alone, we can form 4 cabinets. We, the great-grandchildren, we are maybe 1,000, I don't know. We can form easily 4 cabinets. But that's not going to happen, because if I'm there, it's good enough for me to come from that family. And everyone in that family must understand that they are not going to part with me. Because we are talking of a country of 31 million with probably, let me say 6, with probably 5 million nuclear families. So 1 per family is more than enough. We have to empower others. We have to empower others to feel included, so that everybody will throw his or her heart in the game. So that is political and economic empowerment. Now, the economic empowerment is going to be based on economic federalism, where you spend 50% of the budget on Accra, 50% of the population will move to Accra. Okay. Once we have that system in place, now we know that we're going to spend 10% in a state with 10% of the population. By so doing, if the state is 8% of the population, we spend 8% of budget there. By so doing, we spread economic opportunities for everybody everywhere. We need to be born again. Once we do that, and we bring the people together, because everybody feels it's part of government, either at the national level or at the state level, we know that national development becomes a lot easier. Next slide, please. Technological. You see, people think technology is what? As far as I'm concerned, technology is a catalyst for development. But before it becomes catalyst, people must be educated. And not only that, but it must become part of our culture. Now, when we see Europe, we think Europe dropped from the skies, but Europe did not drop from the skies. Europe was created the way we see it, largely after the Golden Age, largely in the 18th century, when you had great people like Adam Smith, Newton, and all those people. That's how it began. So, education must be focused on technology, and not only that, it must seep into the society so that it becomes part of the culture. Now, when somebody dies, we'll try and look out and do proper post-mortem and not blame a witch. The things we do today, all these things were happening in Europe in the 15th, 16th, 17th century. Superstition and dogma. But the Golden Age, the age of enlightenment, came and swept everything apart. We need that kind of revolution. I'm telling you, the way we think is bizarre. And that kind of thinking can never progress a nation. You are sick. They say, they will think of something weird before thinking that sickness is part of the human condition. Take the person to somebody who has been trained to treat sicknesses. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. Once technology becomes mainstay, once technology becomes part of our culture, then the catalyst for development, we know is around. We know catalyst is around. Without technology, it's like dial-up the internet. It takes forever for us to move from where we are to the next level. We need a new foundation. Technological education, science and technology, innovation. That's the way forward. That's the way forward. We need our own age of enlightenment. I'm telling you, the darkness is too much. We can decide to argue and do whatever, but it is what it is. The darkness is too much. We need light. And technology will bring light to us. Our education must be born again. We need catalyst. Without a catalyst, we'll go at the snail pace, which we are at the moment. Next slide. This is one area I've been speaking much about. It is an invisible part of our misery. That's what I believe. And I can go on and on and on why I believe so, but I'll try and make it short. We believe, the majority of Ghanaians believe, that man is the image and the temple of God. Man is the image and the temple of God. Before even the white man came with his concept of God, we had our own understanding of the cosmos. We say that we believe that we are a body, we are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in a body. Gomocho, Susuma, and Kla, we say in Ga, or Nipadua, Sumsum, and Kra in Twi. We are a spirit, we have a soul, and we live in a body. So we know that part of our existence derives from spirituality. And when that part is distorted, the whole system will be distorted. We believe that man is the image and temple of God. Now, when you sell man into slavery, you are devaluing the image and the temple of God. And there will be consequences. Okay? When you sell your own kind into slavery, there will be consequences because you are selling the image and the temple of God into slavery, into bondage. And it brings or it comes with a curse. Now, everybody must understand that Ghana was the epicenter of the transatlantic slave trade. We have haunted houses as we speak right now in Osu Ashanti, which was the brokerage area. The Ashantis brought their slaves to Accra. The holding bay was Osu Ashanti. We have haunted houses there today. The case. You see, sometimes we behave in very bizarre ways. Now, Queen Elizabeth had died, and all of a sudden, hey, this, that. Yeah, it was a trading system. Okay? Transatlantic slave trade. In trading, you have to have willing sellers and willing buyers. There can be no trade without willing sellers. The willing sellers start the business. They bring their wares to the market, and those willing to buy, you come and buy at a negotiated price. Okay? No white man went into the bush to abduct and kill others. We did that to ourselves. We were the willing sellers. The primary case is on us. You see, when Joseph, or when the brothers of Joseph sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites took him to Egypt, and they also sold him there. At the end of the day, Joseph met his brothers again. They couldn't recognize him, but he recognized them because, so far as they were concerned, he had died or whatever. They never thought that the brother they sold would be in this prominent position. But after he revealed himself unto them, they cried and they begged for forgiveness. And then Joseph said something. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That as at this stage, many will be saved through your action. Something to that effect. We have always behaved like children. No responsibility whatsoever. As if we're sitting down there and somebody came with drones or whatever and bombarded and threw people away. No, that is not what happened. We fought among each other, among ourselves, captured our people, and sold them into slavery. It is about time that we took responsibility. That, like the brothers of Joseph, we tell our brothers over there that we are sorry. We made a mistake. God sent you ahead of us so that at this time of distress for Africa, you come back and help us. In my book, We've Known Africa, there's a chapter I've written, either the Joseph principle or the Joseph phenomenon. We send them ahead. We meant it for evil, but God meant for good. And they will forgive us. And the cares will blow that way. And Africa will develop. And Ghana, the star of Africa, will develop again. Because that is the stumbling block. And not haunted houses. But we have never taken responsibility. We've made the responsibility of those who bought from us. The children of Jacob did not blame the Ishmaelites. They did not put any blame on them because they sold their own brother to them. Whatever happened to the Ishmaelites, I'm not interested. Whatever happens to the white people who bought from us, I'm not interested. I'm interested in our part of the deal. We need to apologize. And then when we are forgiving, Ghana, the South Africa, the epicenter of the slave trade, would blossom. I believe that. So we need that rebirth, spiritual rebirth. Our land is soaked with innocent blood. People who were killed in our attempt to capture them. Their blood is still crying. And we need to take responsibility. We need to be men. Take responsibility and apologize. If those who bought from us do not apologize, it is their problem. I'm not interested. But I'm interested in our part. And we have to apologize. We need the spiritual rebirth. We need the blood of our innocent ancestors from crying to us. We need to save our land. Because what is happening in Ghana is just unbelievable. Ghana, best Ghana, must be born again. Ciao, Manyala.
Thank you for that, Dr. Nii. Thank you. And thank you for those of you who've joined us as the broadcast is going on. We so far have one question, well, two questions. Or Carmen, she says, you mean if the state contributes X% of the win votes, that state gets X% of the total number of cabinet positions of ministers?
Okay, Carmen, if a state contributes X%, Carmen is an engineer, so you see the way he writes his words. If you contribute X% of winning votes, that state gets X number of seats in parliament. But because the cabinet is only 25, 5% of votes equals one cabinet position. So if a state gets 5%, that state gets one minister. If the state gets, if the state gets 10%, that state gets 2 ministers. If the state gets 20%, that state gets 4 ministers. So we do it in such a way that there's a fair representation of every state in the cabinet. And the same way, democracy must reflect demography. Okay. In the same way, you have the same number of fair representation in parliament. It's written very explicitly in my book, The Fair State. How we have to create a fair state, because once we build a fair representation, then we know that nobody will feel marginalized, and we're able to harness our collective energy for national development. So yes, X percent means X number of seats in parliament, and 5X percent means number of ministers in cabinet.
Sheikha says, we don't even use the word nepotism anymore. Meanwhile, that is the name of the game.
Yes, because the constitution doesn't make room for what I'm describing. The constitution doesn't envisage. The constitution believes that the president will be wise enough. But we don't have that experience. Or will be not wise enough to do the right thing. No. They have not done the right thing. So we have to move from a discretionary constitution to a prescriptive one. That says that this is what you have to do to ensure fairness, ethno-regional balance, and of course, gender balance.
Okay. Please keep your questions coming. There's only 2 questions and comments we've had so far. Please keep them coming. In the meantime, I'll just show you who's on here. Just give their greetings. As always, Kenneth.
Oh, St. James Palace. Wow.
Yeah.
Charlie, I wish I was there with you anyway.
He's there to pay his respects to the Queen.
Oh, yes. Grandma Lizzie. Hello, Sofa. Good morning.
We've seen Gabrielle. There's Andrea.
Oh, Biko, good morning. How are you?
There's Eric.
Oh, Ojengo, Jali Tete.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, with regards to, I mean, your thoughts on the spiritual element of it are quite interesting. Also, something has happened, when something very, very traumatic that can pass down through generations has happened. There has to be people that are willing to look at all the natural disasters or seemingly natural disasters and things that have happened and come together to understand why are such things so. I can't remember the exact scripture in the Bible, but there was a time in the Bible, there was tremendous famine, and they came together to try and reason what actually happened. It turns out a few hundred years before, there's an atrocity committed by the Israelites to a group of people. I mean, the people weren't necessarily innocent, but they weren't supposed to have done what they did. And that was why this was hundreds of years before, way before any of their lifetimes. So there's a spiritual principle, I agree. Yes. Anybody who has any hand in selling their brother, their people, handing them over like that, there has to be repentance. There has to be repentance.
There has to. I mean, if God can say that the blood of Abel is crying for vengeance, for revenge, then you can imagine, because his brother killed him, then you can imagine the hundreds and millions of blood crying for revengeance in our land, in Ghana, the epicenter of the slave trade. And that's why we are not seeing anything top. And we're not going to see anything top until we do what the brothers of Joseph did in Egypt. Ask for forgiveness. Apologize. Because we did it. We did it. No white man ever went anywhere in the bush to go and catch anybody. If you have watched Roots before, Kunta Kinte told what happened to him. We did it. When you come to Osu, we had a place called Kante Pikachewe. Right about 100 meters from our house, there's a dungeon there that they kept slaves, and then they took the slaves to the castle to be shipped abroad. Okante Shikachi, Okante rich man, was a slave broker. About 100 meters from our house. You go to Tromon, Osemo, about 100 meters from our house. It was also a holding bay. We caught them and we took them to Salaga Market in Accra and we sold them. Okay? We were the willing sellers. When the trade was abolished, even by the strangers we sold our people to, we got angry. Ashanti got angry. Akwamu got angry. Ga got angry. The business had collapsed. We did that. And we're not going to escape. They were catching people as far as Western Nigeria. And they brought them to Accra. Where my mother comes from, we know the houses. Right now. We can't escape. We can't escape. You cannot kill, maim, abduct the image and the temple of God and think there will be no consequences. Forget about those who bought them. Okay? I'm not interested. They also have their own questions to answer. I'm talking about ourselves and the role we played. And what I believe is the consequences, or are the consequences of the role we played.
Okay, democracy must reflect demography.
That's right. That's right. So if we have a parliament of 100 members, then 1% of votes must be equal to 1 seat in parliament. So if a region has 8% of the votes, that region has 8% of MPs. Now, whether because coming, I've got a completely different idea about how parliament should be reconstructed, should be reborn to make it effective. It's coming in my book, so I don't talk about it here now because of the plagiaries. All right, but it's an interesting thing. I trust you, and I'll talk to you about it privately.
Okay. Right. If there any more questions anybody has, please post them up now. Please post them up. So let's just say you become president. How would you lead? Would you spearhead a spiritual need, the spiritual reconciliation between, not reconciliation, the apology?
And that's what you're saying. How am I going to implement it? How am I going to let it happen?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, if you read Weep Not Africa, I've forgotten the chapter, but I read about the Joseph principle. That Joseph was able to understand that if he had not been sold into slavery, his brothers and his whole family would have died from hunger. He would not be in Egypt. He saw the bigger picture. He said, you made it for evil, but God made it for good. You see, there is too much anger. We are wasting too much energy on anger among Black people. So we are missing the point. Farrakhan will tell you that the Black population in America is the wealthiest Black nation in the world. Okay, the money within the Black community is bigger than the GDP of Africa. But we haven't been able to establish the economy. The Black economy in America is bigger than the GDP of Africa. Okay. I forgot. I think it's about 2 billion or something, 2 trillion. The GDP of Africa is about 1.7 trillion. Yeah, that's how much money. But we haven't been able to establish the Joseph and his brothers link. Because we have been blaming other people forever. We haven't taken responsibility that our brothers are there because we sold them. And God put them there so that today they will have 2 trillion to help Africa. They are very angry. And we are very, I don't know, we're angry. We don't know what we are about. We are very confused. They want a home. Because they still don't feel belonging. Either they do belong where they are. But we have to do something first. And the day I'll be sworn in, It's going to be part of my speech. My inaugural speech, not the plagiarized one, like Akufo-Addo did. My inaugural speech, because there's nothing he said, you know that. Okay, my inaugural speech. We'll talk about it, the big picture. What I've discussed today, that we must be born again, will be there. How I'm going to look at politics, how I'm going to look at economics, social cohesion, technology development, and spiritual rebirth of our land. It will be there. And I know they will listen because there's something in them. You see, your pastor, John, when I came to England first, 1992, he gave me a book, The Opinions and Philosophy of Marcus Garvey. Extraordinary. That changed me a lot. Like your pastor. I don't know why he gave me that book. That changed me a lot. You have to understand the way our brothers over there, the way they think. And the best example is Marcus Garvey. I believe that Ghana, being the epicenter of the slave trade, once we get out of it, Africa will be free. And that's the first thing I would do.
Coleman says, I recall the first shipment of slaves out of the Gold Coast was shipped by the Portuguese to Equatorial Guinea. So the rendering of apologies must start from there, then to Brazil.
Okay, wherever it must start from, we have to do it. We have to do it.
Shika says, there's a huge spiritual part to the situation in Ghana and Africa. We need to repent and be born again indeed.
Thank you. Madam Shika. I was going to say something that shouldn't be said on air. Yeah, but it's very important. I'm telling you, what is happening is just unbelievable. It's just, it's just unbelievable. Even if it's believable, we still have to apologize.
Yeah.
We sold the image of God. We sold the temple of the living God into slavery. Our own kind. And we think it will be fine. And we are doing the same thing today. Look at our children trying to cross the Sahara into Egypt, into Europe. At the time, they brought the slave ships here. Now we are going for our own, we are going by ourselves. I'm here to enslave me, please. I'm dying for my country. But because we do not take personal responsibility, we don't even know that is what you are doing. We don't know. We've never liked ourselves. We hate ourselves. You see, people don't understand. But when the white man came, they came to meet the people who were doing human sacrifices to stones, to rivers, to trees, to whatever. These people don't respect life. People don't respect human life. The British had to force Ashanti in the 1874 from that treaty to abolish human sacrifices. Well, it still happens in Ghana. Now, when you kill human beings for stones and rivers and trees or whatever, and you don't get anything in return, and somebody comes and says, look, if you give me this human being, don't kill the human being, I'm going to give you so much money, so much gunpowder, wouldn't you do it? You do it for stones and foolish things that you created with your own hands. And somebody comes and gives you reward. Wouldn't you do it? And that's what happened. And that's what we are still doing. 1969.
So she has also said that other epicenters, it started there and even continued there long after abolition.
Yeah, I mean, Angola too was an area of the trade, but the epicenter, out of the 42 slave castles and forts dotted on the west coast of Africa, 36 are in Ghana alone. That makes Ghana a special case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
36. Yeah. 36 are in Ghana alone. So our case is very special.
It kind of makes sense. Yeah.
We cannot run away from that. If there is a God in heaven, He will do with the buyers in his own way. But for us, the sellers, the blood of our brothers and sisters are crying on our land. They are still crying there. Because they say that for every one slave captured, 4 others were killed. So they're thinking that the 10 million, that total arrival there could be, we have lost maybe 40 million in capturing the 10 million. So we have so many millions crying. You won't have peace, will you?
No.
We can blame whoever we want to blame. But the fact remains that they are crying on our land. We need spiritual rebirth.
Question here from Kenneth. To what extent is civic education going to be embedded in P.E.S.T.S? We need this as a country.
Yes. Every part of it is education, is impartation of knowledge. Okay. Now, civic education means that you are talking about the responsibilities and the rights of citizens. So it's going to permeate every aspect of society. We have to impart that knowledge everywhere. You know, we're just joking as a nation. There's no structure in place for anything. But all these will be part of it. Once a new thing is done, once a state is reborn, once whatever is reborn, you understand that it's taking on a new life. And a new life is going to come politically, economically, socially, technologically, and spiritually. That one you can count on me. And the power of God, anyway.
Just a last comment. Wow, 85% of the slave casters in Africa are...
Yes. Yes. 36 out of 42. It's terrible. Some of them you don't hear it because they've been destroyed by whatever. But yes.
Okay. Well, Dr. Nii, there are no more questions and comments after that one. So no more. So are there any final words? Or are you happy to call it a day?
The final words I'll say will be that once we diagnose the problem, the treatment is easy. The most difficult part of medical work is diagnosis. And we've been struggling to diagnose our problem. Today, what I'm saying is that our problem is political, economic, social, technological, and underpinning all the slow motion is because of the spiritual distortion and distraction on our land. Once we get that out of the system, there's nothing good that you cannot find in Ghana. But the blood of up to 40 million of our ancestors are crying. Their blood.
One more from Shika. I want to submit that our ancestors found it easy to sell people because they never felt brotherhood with them. Even today, we have many prejudices amongst us.
That is true. That is very true. We were deeply divided then. But you see, even within the same ethnic group, they are still doing human sacrifices. You remember the Odukru of Achimabuakwa? He was killed by some people because their king had died. And this was long after slavery. This was less than 100 years ago. So even somebody who was part of a royal family was killed and his blood was used to cleanse the blacks too. And it was condoned by people like J.B. Dankwa, William Akufo-Addo, and all those people who are supposed to be enlightened. But it's because of our fundamental disrespect for the human being and for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, very sobering. It's a lot to think about, but it does make sense. It does make a lot of sense. Yeah, with everything that's going on, and with all of the things we want to include, like in any country, the spiritual element of it cannot be overlooked. It cannot be overlooked. It is a huge part of everything. So you can even say it's foundational, if you want, to everything else being established. So thank you to everybody who's submitted questions. As ever, Dr. Nii, thank you for your knowledge on the subject. We will be back same time, same place next week as always. I still say let people know about the channel, let people know what Dr. Nii is talking about, direct them to his books, direct them to his website, to all his social media platforms, so that the word can spread. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. Dr. Nii, thank you very much.
Thank you, Uche. Thank you, and God bless everyone who has come to hear us. Thank you.